So we recently celebrated Luang Pasanno's 75th birthday, and reflecting on Paul this past week, and in honor of him and in the great respect that I have for him as our teacher, I wanted to share this morning my favorite story of Luang Pasanno. And this is a story that happened many years ago, and it's something that I've never shared with anyone, and it's really my favorite story of Luang Por. It's the time when I saw him do something that was the most inspiring thing that I had ever seen him do, and in my mind it was an experience of magic. So this happened a number of years ago when I was on alms round with Luang Por and one other monk, walking through Ukiah as we usually do every week. And as people probably know, Ukiah can sometimes be a bit of a rough town, and especially walking around on the streets, there are oftentimes people who might be a bit rough around the edges, and not uncommon for us to have kind of mild confrontations with people. In Ukiah, walking around, oftentimes you may cross paths with people who are homeless or other people who are maybe a bit rough. And in town there, it seems that, one of the big places that people like this oftentimes tend to congregate is in the park. And the park there in the center of Ukiah. And our alms round goes right through the park, so every time we go on our alms round, then we have the opportunity to very often meet interesting people and come upon interesting, possibly challenging circumstances. And this particular day I was walking with Paul and this one other monk, and it was in the middle of summer and starting to get very hot, and so there were a lot of people out, a lot of people in the park. And as we got there, I was feeling a little bit of anxiety, wondering, what we would meet that day. And as we got to the park, I looked up and I noticed that there were these three guys sitting on a park bench up ahead, and they were sitting right next to the path where we would be walking, and they looked like pretty rough guys, like they weren't just kind of the typical kind of homeless people maybe that you meet on the streets in Ukiah. They were pretty rough looking guys, and I had the feeling like, maybe they were in the process of about to commit some kind of crime or something, and so naturally I was feeling a bit anxious, and as we walked towards them, I just had this feeling that, these guys are really gonna mess with us for sure. And as we got closer to them, then, they looked up, and before they had the chance to say anything, just immediately, Luang Por said something like, "Oh, it's getting really hot now." And he said it with complete fearlessness and complete confidence, and with a tone that was just incredibly warm and kind, genuinely warm. And the kind of leader of the group, he just immediately kind of responded with the same energy, and he said, "Oh yeah, it's getting really hot." And then the guy looked at us and said, "So you guys are monks, huh?" And we stopped, and Paul said, yeah, we're monks. And the guy kind of smiled, and he said, "Oh yeah, that's cool, man. I'm actually on my own kind of spiritual journey as well, And then Paul just kind of smiled and said, "Oh, okay, we're good." And then we walked away, and the whole conversation was incredibly warm and genuinely warm. And walking away, I just had this feeling of amazement, like, that group of guys probably hadn't had a warm conversation in years. And anyone else, if they had gone into that situation and they had any kind of insecurity or anxiety, almost certainly those guys would have responded to that, and there would have been some kind of confrontation. So walking away, I had this sense of amazement that Luang had completely transformed a situation that for most people, for everyone, would have been incredibly uncomfortable. He had transformed it into something that was incredibly wholesome. And I felt like he had done something that was impossible, like he had done something that no one else could do. And I had this feeling of like, I just saw him do something magical, something that shouldn't be possible. And for myself, having lived with Luang for many years, all of the things that I've seen him do, that story always stands out in my mind as my favorite because, it was a real example of the power of the practice and an example of someone who has learned how to make their mind peaceful in all situations. There's incredible power. There's the power to transform the world around us. So I'll offer that for reflection.